The Great Kabong. And we're live just like that, everybody. This is our pre-show for today's N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. Looks like we are up and running. Everything looks good with the stream. Hope everybody's doing well. Hello, chat room. Hello, everybody. We're doing our last-minute checks. I'm checking everything looks good on video. The streaming looks good for now. There's a whole thing going on with streaming. We've got presentation ready to go. These look good. We're in good shape, folks. How's everybody doing? Thanks for being here. I should probably get the Vevox info up and running. There it is for those of you that want to get a little bit ahead of the game. There is the link. You could, of course, always use the professormesser.com/QA link. So that's another one. But we've got about 9 minutes before we get started. Hope everybody's doing well. We are really working it. We've got a lot of information today. All brand new questions for the Security Plus exam. We're working on it. We're getting there. I'm trying to adjust everything on my side so that we have all of the things in place. We got folks checking in from all over, from Ohio and Florida, and if you are in the chat room, feel free to tell me where you're from. You can, of course, also plug it into the view that's on your screen and kind of see where you're joining from. It's a digital push pin where you can put in your details into that as well. We got Washington is here. Maryland is checking in. Atlanta is here. Thank goodness. I need to get up to Atlanta. I haven't been there in a while, and it's relatively close to me. I need to work on that. There's Virginia and Charlotte, North Carolina, and Colorado, and Dubai is here. Thanks for being here. Oklahoma, New York, Puerto Rico is here. More New York, Wisconsin, checking in. Thanks for being here. VA, lots of folks in Virginia, Minnesota, Bolivia, Haines City, Florida. There's a city you don't hear a lot of for some reason, and yet it's really, if you want to see Florida, go to Haines City. That's Florida. Florida's like 3 different states all combined into one. So there's a lot. There's not one city that is Florida for sure. Hello, South Africa and Arizona and Houston and Mexico. Thanks for being here. Hunter says, I gained my Network Plus and Security Plus in July and August. Fantastic. Congratulations. And that's a pretty strong schedule you had. July and August did Network Plus and Security Plus, I'm assuming back to back. Pretty nice. Congratulations on both of those. You must be here for the CEUs or just for the amount of fun we have during a live stream. There's Essex in England. Thanks for being here. We all know Essex. The other part of what we're doing today is in the after show. We have the questions from you that I will be taking in the second hour. So if you have questions, in fact, I should make sure that my questions here are turned on. My Q&A, it is here, so you should see. Do I have the announcements ready? I do. And it is enabled. Oh, the Q&A board is off. Turn the Q&A board on. So now you have another tab at the top of your page. And on that tab, you can submit to your question now for the ones that we'll be doing in the second hour. So those are on my screen, and you've sort of seen me behind the scenes here of how I click and do things. So that's what we're doing in that second hour. Got folks checking in from Kissimmee. We're going to go down there this weekend. It's going to be very nice. Fort Lauderdale's here, and Raleigh and Cincinnati and York, PA. Congratulations. Thanks for being here. We got lots of folks checking out the live stream. Thanks for settling in. We'll be getting started in approximately 5.5 minutes. More Florida folks checking in from West Palm. There's another Atlanta. DC is here. We've got Georgia here. I know I need just one more screen, don't I? There's quite a few. So we've got streaming. This is the video switcher. So I like to see everything going on with the video switcher. This is my primary desktop, which is an Apple Studio, a Mac Studio, more appropriately. This is the second screen for the Mac Studio. This is the laptop showing the presentation that you will be seeing later. I guess you'll see it when we start up the slides. And then this iPad is what I use to move back and forth when we are live so that I can see what's coming up on the next slide. So there is a lot going on. You don't see the LCD screen that's on the camera, which is right in front of me. Do I have any more LCD screens in here? I guess there's not one on this camera, so you don't see that one. I think that's it. I think it's all the LCD I have in this room at the moment. Now, this started with one machine, and of course, we cannot keep it to one machine. So this is the nature of me. This is my boat, if you will. So it's just a big money pit, and just put things into it. In fact, I'm getting another mic stand or a mic boom here. Should be arriving tomorrow to do that. How much was the setup? It was, well, it's a lot because it's my boat. You don't even cost justify it anymore. Like, of course we're going to get that. So I don't know, but you can see all the things that are here. Most of the things that are here are on my website at professormesser.com/studio. There's a link from the homepage as well. All right, let's do one last check. Yep, those look good. Screens look good. This looks good. I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we're in pretty nice condition. Well, oh, look, there's some LCD panels that are down here. I forgot about these. 3 more. So we've got 2 up here. You can see the Cylons here. Those are video recorders. Those are recording everything we're doing across 2 different channels because you can see I have both a program channel and a preview. So I can see when I hit a button what you're going to see next. So that's what those 2 big windows at the top are. And I record both of those windows all the time. Just in case something was to happen to the first, I'll have another one that I could to edit with if I need to. Generally, I don't need to for something like this, but this is what I use for my video courses. So I just record at the same time, and then I put the picture in a picture and edit afterwards in post-production. And then there's another LCD panel way down here. That's the actual streaming box that you see the monitor for. So those 2 things are connected to each other. That is the output of this device. So there you go. We got 3 just by thinking about it. That's kind of how it works. What I'm really doing right now, oddly enough, is I'm downsizing all of this. So it used to be that I had 2 very large lights hanging from the ceiling. Those are now much smaller LCD. You don't see them here, but they're sort of just above the camera view are some LED lights that are connected to my desk. So now I can get things completely disconnected from the walls. Everything is on the desk. And that's been my primary goal over the last year, is how do I convert all of this to be in one single area? And that's this desk. It's a long desk. It's pretty long. It's a big desk. And it goes deep, goes way back. About where the monitor is about the back side of the desk. So it's an enormously large desk. Can I say your name? I can't. I don't even know how to pronounce that. So can't do any of those. The other part of this is that some of these I could minimize. In fact, the mixer that I have could be a smaller mixer. I don't need as many channels anymore. So this could be half the size if I needed it to be. The video switchers are getting smaller and smaller. So this one is much smaller. Why can't you super chat? Because I turned it off. No more super chats. So sad. You can every chat is a super chat. Think of it that way. All right, we got less than a minute. I should probably get my presentation in order. Do we have a green light? Yes, we do. That looks good. I don't know what time it is because of all things in here, that was my only clock. so now I don't have a clock. It's kind of bright though. Let's bring it down some. There we go. You have the biggest issue trying to study instead of playing video games. That's my problem. I have the biggest issue trying to produce new content instead of playing video games. I get like 2 hours, 1 or 2 hours a night to be able to do that. So that's what I do as I work completely all the way through the day. And then at night, I reward myself with at least one more, with a little bit there. So we are now at the top of the hour. We can officially get this thing started. I think we are in such a good place. I think it's now time to get a live stream going. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2023 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And if you are following along, and you're here live, you can also join us live and plug your answers directly into the internet and see what other people may have answered with these. If you're not here live, that's okay too. You can follow along with us, and on your side, you can plug in your own answer and see how well you do with any of these. We have a lot to go through today. We're going to start with how you answer these questions. If you are here live, you can pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. That's one way to do it. We've also got another way through the Vevox app. If you've never used the Vevox app before, you can pop open a new browser window and go over to vevox.app. There it is. And there's an ID on the screen that you could see for this particular session. The ID is 118780117. You can see it right there. One of these days, I'm going to get just a permanent ID. Yeah, I'm going to try to find a way to do that so we don't have a different ID every time. We'll just be able to plug in what we need. You can see a number of you have already checked in from around the world. We see people are all over. So this first view of where you're joining from would be your best way to see if you can get into Vevox, plug in where you happen to be. That way you know that you'll be able to answer any questions that come up. We thank you for joining us in here today. It's always a good to see everybody from wherever you may happen to be in the world. So if you are in Vevox and everything is working as expected, there will be a question waiting for you in just a moment when I hit that button. But here is the question. You get to see it a little bit early. The question asks, an organization uses multicast to publish real-time camera video. Which of the following would provide the most efficient transfer of this data? Would it be port tagging, STP, BGP, DHCP relay, or IGMP snooping? Now, this is a question from last month. So this is the only time you're going to see a repeat. And that's our very first question of the day, our rewind question, so that you can go through and see how well you can connect to Vevox and get through all of the details associated with logging in and seeing the questions and making sure that everything is working properly. I guess I should get my head out of the way. There we go. Now you can see the entire question and answer these. Now we're going to come back to this question in just a moment. Our standing rule, of course, is that you may not answer these questions online on the chat room. Instead, follow the links on your screen to vevox.app, and we'll be back to that question in just a moment. Let's talk about this study group. We do one of these study groups for Network Plus every month. You can, of course, go back and look at all of our replays. We'll talk about that in a moment. But we also want to let you know that when we're not here doing live streams, we've got a lot of other content that you can find. Of course, our entire Network Plus course is available online on YouTube for you to watch whenever you would like. There's no registration. It's not behind a paywall. You simply go to professormesser.com/YouTube and you can choose that YouTube playlist. We also have Twitter and Instagram. They have weekly Network Plus pop quiz questions. And you can see all of those available on our Twitter feed or our Instagram channel. There's other links and you'll find them as we go through this so you can find out exactly what we're doing and when we happen to be doing it. The exam we're going to talk about today is the most current version of the Network Plus exam. It is numbered the N10-008. This exam was released on September the 15th of 2021, which makes the estimated retirement date for this exam somewhere around March of 2025. As we get closer to that date, I'm sure we'll have much better idea of when that might be, but this retirement date is pretty well commonly locked in at this point. It's somewhere around that March date. So be looking for that. The important part, though, is we sit here in October of 2023. You've got plenty of time to study for your current version of the Network Plus exam. If you are studying from N10-008 study materials, those are the ones you should go to. So plenty to look at. The exam itself is 90 minutes long with a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90 questions on your exam. And the score you're hoping to get is a 720 on a scale from 100 to 900. That's a little unusual. It's an odd scoring system, to be sure. But the important thing is that you have no control over the scoring system. So what you need to do is simply do the best you can on your exam. The score will effectively take care of itself. On the exam, you will get a mixture of different types of questions. You'll get a lot of multiple choice-based questions, but the first handful of questions you get on your exam will be performance-based questions, and we'll talk about performance-based questions in just a moment. Also let you know that not only do we have our free courses available online, we have downloadable versions for you as well, along with course notes, our exam hacks ebook, and other details as well. This is our success bundle. You can have that in a digital form that's downloadable, or the physical form that I'm showing here includes the USB drive that has all of our digital products on it. And when you purchase this, you can get it as a digital form that you're seeing here, but I can also include it as a physical form, which includes a printed copy of the course notes. All of our course notes and all of our materials are available in both digital and physical forms. If you'd like to know more about that, you can find it on our website at professormesser.com/netsuccess. Also let you know that there is a replay available on this study group in podcast format. It's an audio-only replay. If you'd like to add this to your favorite podcast listening program, you can visit our site at professormesser.com/podcast. The RSS is in there. Or if you are connecting to a popular podcasting site like Apple Podcasts or one of these other podcast consolidators, they're probably on there as well. If we're not on your favorite podcast streaming site, let me know, and I'll add us to that site as well. So you can find us, if you're on Spotify, you'll find us there, for example. So there, you'll never know where we might show up on your favorite streaming site, and let me know if I need to add it to another one that you might be using as well. We've got other replays that you can look at. About a day after we do this study group, there will be a YouTube replay available with timestamps. The one you get today right afterwards will not have timestamps on it, but my marketing manager, Lori, is watching this replay. Hi, Lori. She's going through this probably at 2x speed, and she is putting in all of these timestamps for you. This goes back years now, so you can find exactly what you're looking for in the YouTube video description. It makes it very easy to find the questions or the answers that you are looking for. When we're not here doing a live stream, you can find us in our chat room. We use Discord as our chat engine, and it's over at professormesser.com/Discord, or you can use the icons in the upper right of the website to find us on social media, including our Discord server. That Discord server has a lot of great people in it. It is a fantastic community if you're studying for your A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or even other certifications. And people are always opening an ad hoc study group with audio and video at different times of the day. So it's worthwhile to stop by anytime to see what may be going on. That's usually where I hang out when I'm not here on a live stream as well. We'd love to have you join us as well. You can find it at professormesser.com/Discord. I'll also let you know that eventually you'll need to take your Network Plus exam. Now, you could go to the CompTIA website and pay full price for the exam, or you could visit professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discounted voucher. You don't have to have a discount code. There's no special link that you have to use. They're just already discounted on the Professor Messer website. It's the same voucher you get on the CompTIA website. The only difference is I add more than CompTIA will. In fact, if you buy it from my site, I will give you a free copy of my exam hacks ebook. That's something that can maybe help you during your studies. Might also give you some tips and tricks that will help you during the exam itself. So if you think you might want to get a few extra points on your exam, this might be a great resource for you. You can find all of those at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about that question I asked earlier, which was, an organization uses multicast to publish real-time camera feeds. Which of the following would provide the most efficient transfer of this data? Is it port tagging, STP, BGP, DHCP relay, or IGMP snooping? And let's now close our poll and see how you did. You can see that 26% said port tagging, 21% said STP, 19% said IGMP snooping, 18% said BGP, and 14% or so say DHCP relay. We are all over the place with this one, which, by the way, was about the answers that we got last month on these. So if we're publishing real-time camera video and we're looking to make it as efficient as possible, we will want to use IGMP snooping. IGMP is the Internet Group Management Protocol used primarily for multicast operations. And in fact, this question specifically said that these video feeds are multicast feeds, very different than the unicast feed, for example, that you might get from YouTube. But this allows you to have switches that will identify these streaming multicast feeds and will only send those feeds down to devices that specifically request them. That makes it much more efficient. If you're working with multicast, there's probably an IGMP snooping option within your switch. If you have more of a smarter switch, this obviously would not be on the very basic types of switches that we have in our homes. Very commonly, you'll find this functionality on enterprise-type switches. This is one where you can configure and set up how these particular IGMP settings are handled, and that would indeed be the answer to the question that we were looking for, which is IGMP snooping. Only 19.3% of us chose that particular answer. Port tagging is what we would do to identify packets that we were sending over an 802.1q link, which is a VLAN trunked link. So that helps, of course, with VLANs, but that does nothing to make multicast traffic more efficient on your network. We've got STP, the spanning tree protocol, which helps us prevent loops on a switch network. But STP has nothing to do with multicast, so that would not be the right answer. BGP is a dynamic routing protocol. BGP is great for connecting to an internet provider, but it doesn't do anything to make multicast more efficient. And lastly, DHCP relay allows us to receive DHCP traffic from a DHCP server that is outside of our local subnet. And so in that case, this would not handle multicast as well. The only option in here that really has anything to do with multicast is indeed IGMP snooping. That is the right answer on only 19%. But don't worry, if you got this one wrong, that's good, because if anything comes up on your exam that has anything to do with multicast or it has something to do with IGMP snooping, you now know exactly what that topic is associated with. You're going to get that question right on the actual exam. Well done. Well, let's look at other types of questions that we might do. In fact, I have for you a question that we're going to work through, and this question is not a multiple choice question. The question we just saw, where there was a question in the multiple options to choose from, is that particular multiple choice question is very common. But the first handful of questions you get on your Network Plus exam will not be multiple choice. They will be, well, anything but multiple choice. They might be a fill in the blank. You might have to pop open a command prompt and perform a function. You might need to put things in a matching or put things in order. There's drag and drop questions. It can really be any type of question that you might run into. You will find it on these that have this performance-based question. So I have for you today a performance-based question. And I would like to see how well you do with this particular topic. This performance-based question asks this. I have one here. Here is your performance-based question of the month. From the command line, display a list of this system's incoming and outgoing network connections. So this is more of a fill in the blank when you put it online, but the question is indeed asking you what you would type in at the command line to display a list of this system's incoming and outgoing network connections. Let's see how you do from the command line and working it through here. This would be an interesting one to do. Now, we're going to type this in on ours. In fact, I'm going to do it behind the scenes just to make sure that we're able to do it on our computer. And indeed, we're looking at a lot of different content that we have coming through here. And I've got quite a bit that I could show on my screen. So we're going to actually run it on this view. If you'd like to answer this question, you go to professormesser.com/QA, or we can go to Vevox at vevox.app. The ID is 118-780-117. So hopefully that's given you a perspective of what you would choose. Now, remember, as always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. you want to go to Vevox and be able to lock in your answer on the Vevox screen right there. Now we can see all of those that are on the screen. So now you've got the Vevox ID. You can also go to professormesser.com/QA, which effectively takes you to the same link. So either way works well. Now, of course, there is a Vevox app that you can download as well, and that ID might help you a bit if you're using that app. A number of you have put in your answers already, which is encouraging. So we've either done very well at getting the answer, or maybe we're all putting in the wrong answer. Sometimes that does happen. I have a feeling in this case we're very good. In fact, I should probably, I'm gonna sneak over to the other side and see if I can see the options that many people are putting in so that I can talk about this. You guys are doing great with this question, by the way. There are a number of you that did not get the right answer, which we'll talk about those in just a moment. I think there's really two primary answers that I see coming up on the screen, and we'll talk about what the differences are in all of those as we step through these. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these command lines. If not, there's an entire section of the exam objectives that talks about all of the command lines you need to know for this exam. So of course you should go into this list and have a look at those as well. This is really going to help you if you're studying and you're not familiar with what command lines you need to use. Don't worry, they document everything for you in the exam objectives. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, from the command line list, display a list of this system's incoming and outgoing network connections. That's what we want to do. Now, hopefully you were able to plug this in. I'm going to stop the poll on this side so that no longer is allowing you to lock in the answer. So let's see what you think, or what I think the answer might be on this one. I can see that I would use, in my particular configuration, I would use NetStat. NetStat is the one that I would use. NetStat itself is an extremely useful utility for providing you with details about what may be connecting to your device or what your device might be connecting to. So both incoming and outgoing network connections. NetStat can also provide you with a great deal of other details about the network, including routing tables and other information about the actual executables that are using this utility. And it's available in many different operating systems. If you're using Windows or Linux or Mac OS, NetStat is already built in. It's already in your operating system, and you can run it that way. NetStat by itself shows a default view. NetStat-A gives you all active connections. I'm showing the default view in this screenshot that's right here. We've also got, if you're in Windows, NetStat-B if you're running as in elevated mode, if you're running in administrator mode, or you've popped open a command line with administrator access, you can run netstat-b, which not only shows you what the connection is, but it tells you what application is using that particular connection over the network, which can be incredibly useful for troubleshooting, I assure you. And then if you don't want to see all of the names popping up, which go through a name resolution process, and you're really more interested in IP addresses, you want to use netstat-n, which will show you just IP addresses on this particular network instead of seeing the fully qualified domain name, or in the case of NetStat, the reverse of the fully qualified domain name, being able to see those, which may or may not help you depending on your DNS server. So the answer here was indeed NetStat. That's what we were looking for. That is the command that allows you to view a list of all of the connections that are either inbound or outbound from your computer. And if you're trying to track down a problematic application, or you're worried that there may be some type of third-party process running that you're not aware of, you can identify that using the information included with NetStat. So that was your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were familiar with those. The other big answer that I got here was ipconfig and ifconfig, which obviously are the very common to use in Windows and Linux or Mac OS, which at the command line will show you information about your individual interface on your computer, how Ethernet is configured for your device. It will show you what IP address is associated with an interface. It'll show you the subnet mask that you're using and a lot of other details. But that's about the configuration of your Ethernet card or your interface. That's where that ipconfig or ifconfig name comes from. But it doesn't tell you anything about what might be incoming to your device or what may be outgoing from your device. Ifconfig and ipconfig won't show you any of those details. You must use netstat to be able to identify incoming and outgoing network connections. It's one of the best ways to do it. And if you're someone who is working through troubleshooting on the network, that is a great utility to know. So I looked through the answers that were here, had a huge number of the answers that came through were netstat. I would say probably in the 80 to 90% range. So you guys bounced right back from our rewind question and really took the performance-based question and did a great job. And as I always tell you, with performance-based questions, it's really more about you knowing the content. Everything you're going to hear or see in a performance-based question all comes directly from the exam objectives. So if you know your exam objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question of you. You'll get it absolutely right every time. Let's do another question. I've got a multiple choice-based question that we can talk about. This multiple choice-based question asks, a technician has modified a DNS configuration file. Which of the following would inform other devices that a change has been made? Would that be SOA, MX, SRV, CNAME, or DKIM? Got a few options there. The question again asks, a technician has modified a DNS configuration file. Which of the following would inform other devices that a change has been made? Would that be SOA, MX, SRV, CNAME, or DKIM? A lot of abbreviations here. If you think you know the answer, you can lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA or follow the links for the Vevox app on the screen. Also, as always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to answer online so that everybody has a chance to answer this one and see how well you happen to know what this one happens to be. I think this one is one, if you've worked at all with DNS or if you watch my video dealing with these DNS records, this may be something that you do remember right off the top of your head. Now, everything on this list, by the way, is a real thing. So I didn't make up any of these terms or names or abbreviations. So if you're looking at one of these and you're thinking, is that something fake thrown in? Did he make that one up? I did not. I try to do that with these questions so that you have at least some familiarity with what the right answers are and what the wrong answers are, and then we can walk through every single one of those. That doesn't mean that all of them will be that way, but most of them are that way as well, so that you can absolutely know what these answers could be. Well, a number of you have locked in your answer for this one, so let's see how you did. The question again asks, a technician has modified a DNS configuration file. Which of the following would inform other devices that a change has been made? Is that SOA, MX, SRV, CNAME, or DKIM? And if we close the poll, we can see that 35% is the largest number that we've got is CNAME. We also have 20%, 18%, and 16% that say SOA, SRV, and DKIM, respectively. And then MX is less than 10%. We're down at almost 9% for MX. So this is a difficult one because we got CNAME at 35, which by far is much larger than the others. SOA at 20% and DKIM at 16%. Those are our top three anyway to consider what this one might be. So the question becomes, we've made a change to our DNS configuration file. How does everyone else on the internet know that we made a change? This is an important thing, especially when you're dealing with the DNS. And one of the best ways to do this is by updating your Start of Authority record, the SOA. SOA is there to tell you information about how the DNS is structured down at the very fundamental levels. But one of the things that helps quite a bit with this is that there is a serial number. And if you increment the serial number, everyone on the internet who's referencing your DNS server can pull the SOA record and see what the latest version of it might be. So you can update that serial number, and if they know that, well, last time I checked this server, the serial number was 199900810. Now they've added one to it to 811. It's a new record, which means something must have changed inside of that DNS server. This can be incredibly useful. There's, of course, other information within the start of authority record, especially when you get into things like caching. How long do people cache this information? What type of server are we looking at? There's a lot of really basic configurations in this record that have to do with the configuration of the DNS server. So start of authority, though, really gives everyone the understanding of what this DNS server is for, what version of data we're working with, and then we can compare it to what we think that information might be. Start of authority, usually it's the very top of the configuration file, and if you have a DNS server, then you also have a start of authority record. You have to have one if you're running a DNS server. Well, that means that the 21% of you or so that answered SOA are the ones that actually got this one correct. We also, the CNAME was the majority, or not the majority, but the plurality of you chose CNAME, 35% of you. CNAME, the canonical name, is when you can give one IP address multiple names. And this is how you would identify one of those multiple names. So you may be connecting to www.professormesser.com, but I might call that server something completely different. I might have two servers, Mickey and Minnie, and on my side, I refer to that server as Mickey and that server as Minnie, but in my DNS, I call them www because that's what you're going to connect to. So that's how we're able to assign different names, even though everyone's accessing the same IP address. But that does not give us any information about changes that may have been made to the DNS. So start of authority, definitely the right answer there. The SRV, a record inside of your DNS, is a service record. So if you're trying to access a service, this is where you can document that. For example, if you're running Active Directory in your environment, you're a Windows user, and you want to know where is the Active Directory server, you can add that to your DNS as part of your SRV record. We've got MX records. That's a mail exchange record. That's a pretty important record. You want to be sure that is pointing to the right mail server for your environment. That's how other people know where to send your email, is they access your MX record. And then the last one on here is not a DNS record, although it is information that you would put into a DNS record, specifically a text record. It's the DKIM information, and it's a domain keys management record that's used for confirming the transfer of email and making sure that the email that people receive are really messages that are being sent from the proper servers and that they are indeed properly configured. So DNS configuration is something where you don't want to just start making changes to a DNS configuration file. You could create significant problems for yourself if you put the wrong information into DNS. There's a reason that we always say when there's an outage, the first thing that network administrators think is that, oh, it's probably DNS. That's the very first thing we always think of, because very often it's DNS is the problem. That's not always DNS. Yeah, it is. It's always DNS. I think most of the time it's DNS. It seems to be that way anyhow. There are certainly things that can occur that would not be DNS, but in this particular case, we're looking for the DNS record that identifies a change. And if you answered SOA, 21% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another multiple choice question. I have for you something related to a wireless network. This wireless question asks, which wireless standard operates exclusively in the 5 gigahertz range and supports up to 8 directional MU-MIMO streams? Well, that's a very specific set of questions. The answers, though, is that I want you to tell me, is that Wi-Fi 2, Wi-Fi 3, Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5, or Wi-Fi 6? Okay, there is the challenge, of course. Maybe you know what the IEEE standard is for that particular wireless standard, but we're not only needing to know the IEEE name, we also want to know what the more marketable, publicly facing name is that we have started to give to these wireless standards. So in this case, I want you to tell me the Wi-Fi number associated with this question. Again, the question asks, which wireless standard operates exclusively in the 5 gigahertz range and supports up to 8 directional MU-MIMO streams? Is that Wi-Fi 2, Wi-Fi 3, Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5, or Wi-Fi 6? If you think you know the answer, go to the links on your screen. Either one of them will work, professormesser.com/QA or you can, of course, visit the Vevox.app and use the ID that's on your screen as well. I will also remind you that in your Vevox front end, there are a couple of tabs there. There's a tab across the top that allows you to submit a question. That is a question that we will cover in our second hour. So if you have a question about technology, the industry, career, or really anything that you would like to ask, you can put it into that Vevox Q&A, and we'll search through those and bring up a number of those in the after show. So make sure you do that as well. Got lots to go through in the next step of this. We've got other questions, and this wireless question is probably not one you're expecting, because in the latest version, the N10-008 of the CompTIA exam objectives, they do use the IEEE number, so the 802.11 and then the letter associated with those. But they also require you to know what the Wi-Fi numbers are that are associated, because you'll see those Wi-Fi numbers when you order, when you look at equipment online, when you go to a big box store and you're looking at all of the wireless access points, you may see those numbers pop up as well, and you need to know what those numbers mean. Pretty important. So let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, which wireless standard operates exclusively in the 5 gigahertz range and supports up to 8 directional MU-MIMO streams? Is that Wi-Fi 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? And let's stop the poll and see how you answered this one. About 50% of you say it's Wi-Fi 5 is the answer. 35% said Wi-Fi 6, and then it drops off dramatically from there. Only 8% said Wi-Fi 4, 5% said Wi-Fi 3, and about 1% say Wi-Fi 2. Now, all of these Wi-Fi standards that we published through the years have these terms Wi-Fi 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I imagine there will be 7, 8, 9, 10 coming through the next number of years. So when you run into that, don't worry. It's really correlating back to a specific Wi-Fi version. And in the case of this, we have to go through a couple of steps. First, we have to know what standard this is. So the standard that operates exclusively in the 5 gigahertz range and supports up to 8 directional multi-user MIMO streams, you can think of immediately, oh, that is 802.11 AC. We know what version that is, but I didn't ask you for 802.11 AC. I want to know what the Wi-Fi name is for 802.11 AC, and it is Wi-Fi 5. Is the version number that we have associated with that. This is a version of Wi-Fi that does operate exclusively in the 5 gigahertz range. It does not operate in the 2.4 gigahertz range. So if you're using the 802.11 AC on your network, the AC part is only in 5 gigahertz. There's a lot of great functionality that is included with this latest version. One of the biggest changes that helps quite a bit is they added multi-user MIMO into 8 separate downlink streams. So they really improved the ability to have multiple people transferring a lot of data over your wireless network all simultaneously and being able to handle that much data going through your network. That is twice as many streams as 802.11, and it goes up to, if you have the right configuration, you can approach 7 gigabits per second of total theoretical transfer on the network. So Wi-Fi 5 is the answer that we were looking for, and indeed, we're going to say 50%. So we're going to say the majority of you say it is indeed Wi-Fi 5 is what we were hoping for. That is the right answer. That's what we were looking for. These other versions of Wi-Fi are versions that do exist. There is a Wi-Fi 2 and Wi-Fi 3 and Wi-Fi 4 and Wi-Fi 6. So those, of course, are so that you can talk to other people instead of using that jargon of, are you running 802.11 AC? And people will say, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to run wireless. Well, look at the box. Does it say Wi-Fi 5? Oh, yeah, it's Wi-Fi version 5. Okay, well, now I know what version you're running, which seems to be much more palatable for anyone who is maybe a non-technologist, but it's another good way that you can confirm with somebody what version of that you may be using. So that's a nice thing to have anyway, especially if you're constantly having to talk to people who may not be interested in learning all the crazy jargon that we have to learn. They just want to know what version of Wi-Fi this is. Oh, it's Wi-Fi 5. And that way they can go to any place and they need a Wi-Fi 5 access point. They'll know that what to look for in that box. They'll know they're getting the right Wi-Fi version from all of those. That is the right answer, Wi-Fi 5. If you answered that, got that one absolutely correct. Well, as you can already tell, there is extensive information in this course dealing with network communication, wireless connectivity, cabling. There's a little bit of security thrown in. There's a little bit of everything inside of the Network Plus. And one of the things that you may not realize is if you look at the entire Network Plus course that I've created, it's 93 videos that you would need to look through. And it's over 14 hours of content. And although I recommend you look through every single one of those videos, I do recognize that not everybody has enough time to go through every single one of those. But it's still important that you get the information that was contained in all of those videos. So I took all of the text, all of the important tables, all of the important graphics, and I put them into one document. This is my Network Plus course notes. These are available not only in the physical version that you see, but or digital version that you see, but I've also got a physical version, which is identical to that digital version, but it is one that you can get in a physical form that I will ship to you. So you've got the options. And if you get the physical version, you also get to download the digital version for free. The course notes themselves, went all the way to the end there, so you can see the course notes contain all of those great tables, all of the text, all of the great graphics that are inside all of our videos. It's a nice consolidated point where you can find exactly what you're looking for, all contained in one single document. And because it's a PDF, you can put it on your favorite mobile device. You can put it on your computer at home. So no matter where you happen to be, you will have access to this very important training material contained within my Network Plus course notes. If you'd like to learn more about these, you can read about them on my website. Go to professormesser.com/NPCN. It stands for Network Plus Course Notes. And you can, of course, have a look through those and see if that's something that might help you for being able to do that. So hopefully that will give you something to work on as you're watching the video, or maybe after you've watched the videos. That will be a nice summary of everything you need to know for this exam. Well, hopefully that is something that you might consider. In the meantime, let's do another question. I've got a multiple choice question for you that asks, a company is activating a remote disaster recovery site containing a duplicate of their data center hardware and software. Which of the following would best describe this site? Would it be cloud site, warm site, hybrid site, hot site, or cold site? All real things, of course. So you've got a few options to choose from. The question again asks, a company is activating a remote disaster recovery site containing a duplicate of their data center hardware and software. Which of the following would best describe this site? Is it cloud site, warm site, hybrid site, hot site, or cold site? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen or links that are on your screen. Either one of them will work, and you can lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to lock in your answer following those links that are on your screen. See if you know what these happen to be. All of these are real things. Maybe some of them aren't sites, but they'll give you an idea of things that you need to know. And of course, if you are in the world of disaster recovery, this is an important set of topics that you need to know as well. So lock in your answer. See how well you happen to know this one. This might be one that you haven't run into before, and will certainly cover topics that are contained within the CompTIA exam objectives. So make sure you're familiar with all of those. This is a question, by the way, that if you are working towards your Network Plus, you'll probably see questions like this also on Security Plus. I think there's a whole section on Security Plus about these as well. So this might give you a little bit of a head start if you're planning to work also on that certification as well. Well, a lot of you have worked hard to get your answers in very quickly on this one. So I'm wondering, did we get all the questions? Did we get all the right answers? We're going to find out in just a moment. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, a company is activating a remote disaster recovery site containing a duplicate of their data center hardware and software. Which of the following would best describe this site? Is it a cloud site, warm site, hybrid site, hot site, or cold site? And we should have a look of what's there. And if we have a look, we can see that 48% of you say it's a hot site And from there, it drops down into what's effectively a three-way tie for second place between cold site and warm site at about 16 and 17%. And then you have a hybrid site at 12%. And down at 6% is the cloud site and what's there. So we've got this disaster recovery site. And the important part of this question is that it clearly states that this site has a duplicate of their data center hardware and software. Everything is duplicated at this other site. Whenever you see anything like that, where you have an exact replica of these sites, then you've got a hot site. That is one where you could effectively, at a moment's notice, flip a switch, if you will, maybe in the virtual sense. You would flip a switch or go through a set of processes that will move everything from your original data center site into one that is a remote disaster recovery site where everything is correct. So you've got a few different options there whenever you're working through this. In this case, you would have all the same hardware that you would normally run in your data center. This also means that you ultimately buy two of everything whenever you buy something for your data center, because you need one for the remote site, the disaster recovery site. And you're constantly updating the applications. You're constantly updating your data so that everything on this site is effectively a mirror image. Now, we call it a hot site because you can very quickly now move from one site to the other at a moment's notice. It is up and running always, and because it's always up and running, we refer to that as a hot site. That is the answer that we were looking for. And in fact, 48% of you say that's the answer that I would use as well. Hot site is the right answer. So if you chose that one, you got that one absolutely correct. Now, there are other options in here. The other sites that you need to know for your Network Plus exam are the warm site, the cold site, and the cloud site. Those are the other three types of sites. The warm site is one that maybe has equipment, but it doesn't have all the latest data. Or maybe the equipment's not even turned on and ready to go yet. That is a warm site. If you want to look at a cold site, it's a site where nothing is set up. Everything's probably in a box somewhere else, and you need to still ship everything in, put it into a rack, turn it on, configure it, load the data. That's obviously a much more involved process than what you would see at something like a warm site or a hot site. And then the other site, one that's especially useful, especially for cloud-based technologies, is a cloud site where you don't have to travel to a separate location to get a duplicate of their data center and hardware and software. Instead, you are duplicating everything in the cloud. And that is certainly a viable disaster recovery option if your configuration allows for you to have a cloud-based infrastructure. The only thing on this list that's not really a site per se is hybrid. This is really more describing a cloud implementation where it is a hybrid configuration between a public cloud and a private cloud, not really one or a term that we would associate with remote disaster recovery. So hybrid site in this case is one that does not apply at all to this particular question. The question regarding having a duplicate of everything ready to go is indeed a hot site. 48% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done with that. Plenty to go through. Disaster recovery is even things that we need to know on this exam. Hopefully that's one you're familiar with. Let's do another question. I've got another one here, and let's see if I can have a look at what this question happens to be. If I can fix my earplug and my earphone here, my in-ear monitor. This question asks, an attacker has administratively configured the hardware address of an Ethernet device. Which of the following would best describe this technique? Is that media conversion, DNS poisoning, MAC spoofing, brute force, or traffic shaping? An attacker has administratively configured the hardware address of an Ethernet device. Which of the following would best describe this technique? Is it media conversion, DNS poisoning, MAC spoofing, brute force, or traffic shaping? If you think you know the answer, follow the links on your screen at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to see how well you do with answering this one. A lot of people answering very quickly. I always like to watch the numbers go up. And I think maybe we know this one. Maybe we're getting 100% on this particular question because it goes up so fast. I'm thinking everyone must know what this one happens to be. That's not always the case. So we'll have to see in a moment what this is. I agree, chat room. You are geniuses. The chat room is smarter than me by far because you've got all of these folks there that can always second check or check and see if the information I'm providing is really the right thing to have it there. So we'll see. And we've got, see, there's folks in the chat room. You always pick the wrong answer because you're chaotic evil. Of course you are. The chat room. We have some of those as well. That's perfectly. We take all kinds. We take your neutrals. We take your chaotics. We take your maybe there's a couple of chaotic good in there, and they can fight with each other, and work through the differences in the chat room. We'll have to see if that actually happens. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, an attacker has administratively configured the hardware address of an Ethernet device. Which of the following would best describe this technique? Is it media conversion, DNS poisoning, MAC spoofing, brute force, or traffic shaping? And which one did you choose? Let's find out what everyone in the chat room chose. They say, by far, 86% of you say MAC spoofing, and everything else is single digits. Media conversion, not even a percent. I thought that would be the one everyone chose. DNS poisoning, 6%. Brute force was 3%. Traffic shaping, almost at 4%. So this is where we get a lot of people answering this question. Now, the real question is MAC spoofing the correct answer? Did all of us, 86% of us, choose the wrong answer? Of course not. We're spot on with this one. Of course, this was MAC spoofing. This is what we do. We're working through adding your own MAC address to a device. MAC spoofing is one where certainly if you are someone who is configuring a device, and you may have even seen this in the configuration settings inside of Windows or other devices, this is one where you really do have some options as to what the MAC address is inside of your device, which is great. Sometimes you will hear people refer to this as the burned in address or the physical address, but it doesn't have to be burned in. It can be one that we assign to the device. In fact, if you think back to early forms of internet connectivity at home, there were certain routers where you had to manually add a specific MAC address to be able to connect to your internet service provider. Thankfully, not many internet service providers do that any longer. But you may find times when having a duplicate MAC address on your system is important. It doesn't have to be something malicious. This might be a normal part of the configuration for that device, is that you will need to assign a different MAC address than the burned-in address that's in this device. So another one of those important tools that you will need to have available for something like this. Now, these other answers are still things you need to know for your exam, so let's step through these as well. Media conversion refers to changing the network media itself. So if you have Ethernet on one side and wireless on the other side, there needs to be some type of conversion. We might do that with a wireless access point. There are individual media converters you can get that are very commonly used when you need to move between different media types, for example, between copper and fiber. So if you're coming in on a twisted pair copper connection, but you really need fiber to run to a separate building on your campus, you might use a media converter to convert that to fiber, send it to the other building, and then convert it back to copper on the other side. So you've got some options there to work through this. You've also got options that people chose. Brute force was another option. Brute force, commonly associated with security, where you're constantly trying to find a particular value by trying every iteration that it could possibly be. We commonly see brute force being used when people are trying to reverse engineer someone's password. We've also got other terms such as DNS poisoning, which is a useful thing to use for DNS, but it's also a security concern as well, where someone is changing or modifying the information that you would be receiving from a DNS server. That obviously has nothing to do with the hardware address of an Ethernet device. And the last answer that you effectively did not change is traffic shaping. Traffic shaping is one that is very common on people's networks to be able to prioritize certain traffic over other types. In this case, Changing a hardware address doesn't have anything to do with the prioritization of traffic, so it would not be traffic shaping. MAC spoofing is exactly what we were looking for. That is the answer. So if you chose, the 86% of you that chose MAC spoofing got that one absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that gives you a verification that you have earned a 1-hour webinar category CEU. This is obviously something that you would only need if you were working towards your the renewing of your certifications. You would already have your A+, your Network Plus, or your Security Plus certification. So if you don't have a cert yet, this makes no sense to you whatsoever. You can ignore this for the next 30 seconds or so. But for those of you that would like to receive an email from me that is digitally signed, you would need to follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. Click the link for Contact Us. In that Contact Us form that comes up, put your name, your email address, and in the subject line, put October 2023. In the body of the message, on a line by itself, I'd like you to put the super secret code words of the month, MAC spoofing. MAC spoofing is the super secret code words of the month. That's how I know that you must have watched up to this point, because you know what the super secret code word is, and you must include that in the message if you want to get credit. In the rest of that message in the body, you can put anything you'd like. Maybe tell me how your studies are going. If you're working on a renewal or you're working on another cert, I love to hear about these things. I read through every single one of these that you send. You're more than welcome to add anything. But if you don't want to, that's fine too. Just put MAC spoofing. I'll know what it's about, and you can just send that message directly to me. You will need to do this if you're watching this on the replay, because on the replay, and I would say also on this live stream, it's important as well, CompTIA wants to see some type of verification that you participated in that 1 hour of a webinar. And I'm more than happy to send these to you. Just make sure you follow those instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the website, click Contact Us, put your name, your email address, put October 2023 in the subject line, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, MAC spoofing. And it takes me about a week to turn these around, but I will get back to you. I'll send back to you an email that has a verification that you watched this for a 1 hour webinar credit. Let's do another question. We've got time for one more at least. This next question is one that asks, I guess I should have it up on my screen too. This next question asks, a technician is using a multimeter during when troubleshooting. You can tell I probably wrote this late at night. A technician is using a multimeter when troubleshooting or during troubleshooting. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this use? Would it be to verify the operation of a router interface, fasten a network wire to a wiring block, mirror traffic on a switch interface, create a wire map, or listen for an analog sound on a wire? Maybe not the answers you were looking for. The question again asks, a technician is using a multimeter during troubleshooting. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this use? Would it be to verify the operation of a router interface, fasten a network wire to a wiring block, mirror traffic on a switch interface, create a wire map, or listen to an analog sound on a wire? You think you know the answer? Follow the links on your screen to lock in your answer. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You've been very good about that in this study group today. Thank you so much. Let's see if you know what you would use this multimeter for. It's got to be one of these, right? It's got to be something that we can do with one of these connections. Let's see if you happen to know what it is. Lock in your answer and see if you can tell me what you think the answer might be. This should be an interesting one. Feel free to go through and see if you can understand or recognize what some of these other tools might be as well. So I think that's another important one. Make sure if you're looking at some of these, maybe you know what tool you would use for these. So absolutely do that as well. See if you know what that one is. Yes, you notice the number's not going up quite as fast as other people in the chat room are making a note as that last one. Maybe we'll still get 86% though. Speed is not what we're looking for here. We're looking for quality. We're looking for everything that's in there. So see if you know what this one is. I think this would be good. How often someone in chat room says, I work in IT, I've never had to use a multimeter. you are missing out on a huge amount of capabilities if you've never used a multimeter. Multimeter can be used by anybody, whether you're in IT or not, but especially in IT. And at the end of this answer, you'll know why it's especially useful. How often is it useful to use a multimeter if you work in data? I use it all the time, because it provides you with information that you simply can't get from other sources. You're guessing unless you do that. So another one of those where we're focusing on these. Let's see how you did with this question. The question again asked, a technician is using a multimeter when troubleshooting. I change it every time. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this use? Is it verify the operation of a router interface, fasten a network wire to a wiring block, mirror traffic on a switch interface, create a wire map, or listen for an analog sound on a wire? What did you choose? 86% of us say, not close to 86 in this case, 35% of us say listen for an analog sound on a wire. Okay, well, 35%. That's not bad. I guess if we count them up, it's close to 86, right? Create a wire map was 27%. Verify the operation of a router interface was 26%. So those are our top three. It goes down to single digits after that. We've got 6% that say fasten a network wire to a wiring block, and only 3.7% say mirror traffic on a switch interface. Well, if you got a multimeter, then you've got a fantastic tool that you can use to do a number of different things. Multimeters are what most people think about when they want to verify voltage. They think that's all that does. You have to be an electrician to need a multimeter, right? Well, that's just one of the many things that a multimeter can do. And certainly if you're looking at a network connection, maybe you're plugging in a router, maybe you're plugging in a switch, maybe you're not in your data center, maybe you're not sure if the interface that you're plugging into for power is wired properly, you can configure that with your multimeter. It's a very good example of that on the screen right now, and being able to use that. You can also use a multimeter not just to look at AC voltage, but maybe you want to see inside of a device past the power supply. Is that device or power supply providing DC voltage, and how much? This can be a great troubleshooting tool. Very commonly something you would see more on the A+ side, but it can be very useful if you're troubleshooting a switch or router or some other type of device. And of course, as you can see here, you ever see those battery checkers where you put the battery into it, it's perfectly sized, and it tells you if the battery is good or bad? That's effectively what the multimeter can do when you configure it for DC power. So it's a great way to check, is this battery good or is it not good? How do you not have one of these at home and having it there? And multimeters are great for being able to determine if the copper on this side is connected to the copper on the other side. We refer to that test as a continuity test, to tell us, are we really looking at a single piece of copper that is directly connected on both sides of that connection? So you'd plug the black lead into, or connect the black lead on one side of the wire, connect the red lead on the other side, and it will make a noise. It will beep if there is a connection between those two. So if you want to see the connections on two sides of a cable, that's the continuity function. If you want to be sure that a fuse is working properly, you can check both sides of the fuse. If it beeps, your fuse is good. We know what the status is. And for wire mapping, which is an incredibly useful tool, if you have access to both sides of the wire, you can plug in or connect the lead on one side of the multimeter to pin 1, and then check every other pin on the other side to see what beeps. And that's your continuity. That's how you know what pin on one side is connected to which pin on the other side, and you can manually build out a wire map if you don't happen to have a cable tester with you. So this is the ultimate Swiss Army knife of electronics. And if you don't have a multimeter, you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice. They're very inexpensive. You can pick one up for 10 to 20 bucks on Amazon, and it will give you extensive details about your electrical configuration, and in some cases much, much more, so that you can see which wires happen to go where you would like them to be, what pins are connected. Wire map is what we were looking for. That's the only thing in this list that matches the list that I just gave you. 27% of you chose wire map as the correct answer. 35% chose listen for an analog sound on a wire. And a multimeter doesn't provide you with a way to listen in to analog sounds on a wire of any kind. That is obviously describing the inductive probe that would commonly be used when you plug a toner onto one side of a cable and use the inductive probe on the other side of the cable to try to figure out where the end of that cable might be. So that is one where you need a different type of equipment. In that particular example, listening for an analog sound on a wire would be an inductive probe. Verifying the operation of a router interface. There are a number of different ways to do this, but what I was looking at here was a loopback cable or a loopback plug. That is a device that is able to take information going out of an interface, turn it around, and send it right back into the interface so that you can evaluate how well that interface might be working with nothing else connected to it. That is a loopback plug. We have fastening a network wire to a wiring block. Only 6% of you chose that one, but in that particular case, you would use a punch down tool because you're punching it down into that wiring block. And lastly, mirroring traffic on a switch interface. That would be a span port, that would be a physical tap, or it may be a mirroring function built into that particular switch. In any case, that has nothing to do with a multimeter. The only option here that has anything multimeter-like would be creating a wire map. And that was the example I gave earlier where you put the probe on pin 1 on one side of the cable, and then you use the other probe to see what pin that connects to on the other side of the cable. And you just document out pin 1 is connected to pin 7, pin 2 is connected to pin 2, pin 3 is connected to pin 1, and so on. You can build your own wire map that way and know what it is when you're looking through these. So hopefully that would be exactly what you would use. Unfortunately, although 35% of you chose listening for an analog sound on a wire, multimeter doesn't even have a speaker. There's no speaker on the multimeter. I'm not sure how you're going to listen in with the multimeter. You need a different type of probe for that. And if you go to my video on hardware tools, I go through every single one of those hardware tools so you can get more familiarity with inductive probes, the toner that you would use on that, the punch down blocks, and other devices as well. That's what we were looking for, was creating a wire map. If you're one of the 27.61% that chose wire map, you got that one absolutely right. That's what you would use. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour. I've been talking a lot on this one. So let me give you one more question. Why wouldn't we? Here's our next question on the list. It asks, an administrator is installing a new Microsoft SQL Server instance in the data center. Which of the following should be enabled on the data center firewall? Would that be TCP 1433, TCP 3389, TCP 5060, UDP 161, or TCP 1720? If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer here at professormesser.com/QA or use the Vevox link that is on your screen. We'll come back to this one in just a moment. Let me flip this over to the other side so that I can put in my own answers. Sometimes I like to do that too. Figure out the details of this. Lock in your answer. It is on your screen. Let me bring that up right here. There we go. Now you can lock in your answer of this. Somebody wanted to be able to do this. We thought it is not a trick question. This is a good question for this one. Hopefully it's one you're familiar with. Port numbers are important. We run into port numbers. You've already seen these on the A+. Perhaps even more important for the Network Plus, because we will run into port numbers on packet captures, router configurations, firewall configs. There's so many places we run into port numbers, and these are port numbers we need to know as well. Hopefully there's some port numbers here you recognize, because all of these port numbers are from the exam objectives. So even if you know the right answer, make sure you look at the other answers as well, and you're able to name the protocol and network configuration that you would use with these. And I intentionally chose some that are probably not the most mainstream port numbers that you would run into. So feel free to have a look at all of those for that SQL Server instance. I need to move and change a few things on my screen. There we go. We'll get you the port numbers up so that you're able to step through those and know what the port numbers are that you need to know for this exam. Port numbers, it's one of those where when you start working with them, they become very obvious because the port numbers themselves are things you use all the time. But you will run into cases where, especially if you've just started with Network Plus, this may be sort of a newer thing for you. So I tell people all the time, Don't worry so much about the port numbers. You can really memorize them with rote memorization, but the port numbers themselves can be pretty useful. And knowing them off the top of your head will be important as you go along, at least for the most important ports you know. And once you start using them, it just becomes second nature. So if you're in the process now where you're worried about the rote memorization, don't worry. All of this just becomes second nature once you start working with them. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, an administrator is installing a new Microsoft SQL Server instance in the data center. Which of the following should be enabled in the data center firewall? Is that TCP 1433, TCP 3389, TCP 5060, UDP 161, or TCP 1720? And let's find out what you chose. We'll close the poll, and 66% of you say it's TCP 1433 by a long shot. About 16% say TCP 3389, 12% say TCP 5060, UDP 161 at 3%, and TCP 1720 at just over 1%. So that by far, quite a majority say it's TCP 1433. Well, we're plugging in and using Microsoft SQL Server. Squirrel Server, as we say here in the South. That Squirrel Server is one that is running a Microsoft product. That's a product from Microsoft that they call Microsoft SQL Server. And if you're using that on your network, the default port number that is used for SQL Server is TCP port 1433. That's the number we were looking for Microsoft SQL Server. Now, there are other databases we also need to know for the exam. For example, SQLnet, which is an Oracle product. Sometimes you'll see that called Oracle Net or Oracle Net 8, is TCP port 1521. And then if you're using MySQL, that's a very common database that you would see, especially on the internet side. It uses TCP 3306. So 3 database port numbers we need to know. And the one that was most important was the Microsoft SQL Server for this question. And that answer is obviously TCP port 1433. And you can see that 66% of you said, yep, that is exactly what we were looking for. TCP port 1433 is what we wanted. Now, these other port numbers are also services you need to know for your Network Plus certification. The TCP 3389, another Microsoft protocol, that's one commonly used for the remote desktop protocol, or RDP. So if you're sharing someone's desktop with Microsoft Windows, you may be using Microsoft Remote Desktop Protocol, which uses TCP port 3389. TCP port 5060 is another one that's on our list. Whenever you start getting into the higher numbers, you know it's something that probably is not incredibly familiar with the things you're working through. But 5060, 161, and 1720 are also port numbers from the exam objectives. If you ever, in fact, I should bring up a copy of the exam objectives so you can see where we're pulling this information from. This can be very, very valuable. If you've not worked with these exam objectives before, everything's in here. So for example, I will go here into our list and you can see all the port numbers we need to know as part of this exam. You can see them all listed here. I added some others into the mix for this question, but you can see everything. For example, UDP 161, well, that's SNMP. You can see it on the list. So we mentioned the 3389. There's the remote desktop protocol. We've got a number of like 5060 and 5061 are for session initiation protocol. It's when you're doing voice over IP. So a lot of the port numbers that we are working through in this question deal specifically with those particular ports, and they are all in your exam objectives. Everything you need to know is listed in those objectives, and that's a great place to go for any of those details. If you're ever wondering, do I need to know this? Do I need to know something else? It's in the exam objectives. Make sure you step through those. If you want to get your hands on your own set of objectives, we have a link over to the CompTIA website. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives, and that will also take you over to that link. That's incredibly useful to use. Make sure you're familiar with those. And yeah, you're right. I think 1720 was the only one on this list that is not in the objectives, but I added it because I needed some other odd number to use. I told you sometimes I definitely know what some of these might be. I do mix them up occasionally, work through those. Also let you know that we do one of these study groups every month. The next study group is planned for November the 21st. November's an odd month because there's holidays and people that are out. You can see my scheduling in November a little bit chaotic as well. We have our A+ study groups on the 7th and the 9th. We've got our Network Plus study group on the 21st, and on the 28th is our Security Plus study group for November. We also have a Security Plus study group for this month, for October. We haven't done yet. It's on Thursday of this week. If you're watching this live, we're doing this live stream on a Tuesday. On exactly the same time on Thursday, we have our Security Plus study group of the month. You might want to come back for that one if you're interested at all in some of the details you need to know for Security Plus. And if you're ever wondering when the next live event is going to be, you can always find our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar, or simply use the calendar link that's on the Professor Messer website. Well, can you believe we've gone through an hour already? But hopefully that's giving you some information that's going to help you study for your Network Plus exam. We're not done yet, though. Stick around. In the second hour, I will take questions from you. So feel free to head out to that second hour and see if you can submit questions that I can answer for you. We sort of turn this around, do it in the other direction, don't we? Don't forget about our Success Bundle and all of the other study materials on our website. You can find those at professormesser.com/netsuccess. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. Why pay full price on the CompTIA website when you can get the same voucher on the Professor Messer website at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, we have our Discord, our YouTube, our Twitter, and other social media sites. You can find us by simply typing in professormesser.com/ the name of the site you'd like to find us on, /Discord/YouTube. And this might be a great time to remind you that if you liked this video, we'd love it if you gave a thumbs up. And if you subscribe to our channel, we'd be over the moon. We're so close to 800,000 subscribers on our channel. We'd love for you to put us right over the top of that today. Find out more. Visit any of those sites to follow us and what we're doing there. Stick around for the next hour. I'll be taking your questions that you're putting in our Vevox. We'll see what questions you have about the industry, about technology, or about anything that you would like to ask. Thanks for joining us in this study group. We'll see you next time on our Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Let's take a sip and let's bring up a picture of me. There we are. Hey, we're here. And now we could take your questions in the study group. I've got all of this built into Vevox. So you can, if you go into your Vevox, there's an extra tab on your screen where you can submit questions that you would like to have me answer for what we're doing here. This can be questions about technology. It can be about certifications. It can be about career, or it can be about anything else you want to talk about. And if that's something that you'd be interested in, go to vevox.app, use the ID 118780117, and you could submit your questions on that particular Q&A. There's a number of questions that are already in here. So I'm just going to jump right into it, and we're going to start answering some of these. So let's see. Let's start with a good one, which is one of the first ones that came in from Donald, who says, hey, I appreciate all your content. It's helped me a lot. In one of your previous study groups, you mentioned we would need to learn some coding for network jobs. Can you remind me which one and give an example of how it is used? So this is a common question, especially when you start talking about technology. In fact, a lot of people will tell you, oh, you must be programming. There must be some coding that you're doing. We should learn how to code. Learning how to code is so important, don't you think? We should do more coding. And I think a lot of people just connect computers with programming. Obviously, there is a link there. But from the perspective of someone in IT, it may not be the link that other people think it is. So let me explain. Well, when you start dealing with what people consider to be coding, I think it's important that we qualify what we're talking about. So if you are someone who is programming applications, you're building apps. It's an app that's running on a mobile device. Maybe you're building apps that are going to run in a browser. Maybe you're building an executable that's going to run in Windows or Linux or Mac OS. I consider that to be, and I put it in a category of programming. If you are creating an app, you are a programmer. You're an application developer. That's probably a more accurate way to say it, but I put that into the programming bucket. So that is more of the computer science world. If you look at computer science majors in college, if you look at computer science from a perspective of someone who's building an application, or you're building hardware and you need software to interact with that hardware, that's all computer science. So that is probably the most important part of getting through all of these considerations, is knowing what programming is. I'm going to put it into that computer science bucket. The things that we do here in our website and in these certifications are information technology certifications. So IT and information technology, I put into a separate category from computer science because it is a separate category from computer science. In information technology, we don't do programming. We don't build applications. We don't build a mobile app. We don't write apps for a browser. We don't create executables for Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. Instead, in IT, we do scripting. I think scripting is probably the best description I could use to be able to do this. So scripting and automation of systems is where we really focus in IT. So when I talk about skills that would be important for you to know in IT, knowing how to use PowerShell scripts are incredibly important on a Windows network, and knowing how to do things like automation of the cloud. We commonly refer to this as orchestration. So being able to automate things that we're doing in the cloud might use scripting languages such as Python. Those are probably some of the two best terms that you can focus on, especially if you're looking to get better in automation, you're looking to get better in scripting, and you need some really useful skills to put on your resume. PowerShell and Python would be two great places to start. If you do both, it's even better. So that's the whole idea, is being able to script and automate. It's really a core of what we do in technology, is being able to script those. So if you're someone who is looking to know where you should focus your efforts, if you're planning a career in IT, you should focus your efforts on, as it relates to developing skills, it would be that scripting. That's exactly what you would use. So make sure you focus on PowerShell in Windows and Python. But of course, there are other ways to script. I write a lot of scripts as shell scripts in Linux to maintain my servers. I write a lot of scripts in PHP. I write scripts in anything, wherever that script is. I find the best way to script using that particular language. And it allows me to automate a great deal of what I do on my website. So the automation and the scripting of what you're doing in IT is incredibly important. You're not building an application. You're not writing an app for a mobile device. You're not building an app in a browser. You're simply finding ways to quickly execute through different configurations. And there's a big emphasis in this in the newest Security Plus, for example, that will be released at the beginning of November, is they really not only tell you different scripting languages that are important, but they discuss more in depth as to why you would need to script. And I think that's an important part of the question that we had here, is why would you need to know that? Now, if you're in an environment where somebody wants you to build an application, that you're in this process of building apps and deploying apps, you're creating applications in C, or you're building apps to be used online, you're more on the computer science side, you're not in IT. You're not dealing with A+ or Network Plus or Security Plus. In fact, you could spend your entire career becoming proficient in the world of application development. And that's why I put it off into a separate area of computer science, because I think that's really where it belongs. We can focus instead on our side at automation, scripting, and being able to do things automatically using some of these scripting languages. So that's a really good place to go if you're trying to find the right tools or the right skills that will make a difference on your resume. And in fact, these skills will be skills that you use for your entire career. I didn't think when I was creating batch files in Microsoft DOS that I didn't think at that time that those skills would be something I would still be using 10 years later, many years down the road. And indeed it is, because you can apply those scripting skills to other languages. So it's very easy to pick up PowerShell if you scripted in other languages before. It's very easy to pick up Python if you scripted in other languages before. So once you do the first one, there's a bit of a learning curve, but then you find adding on others a little bit easier. at that point. So that's what I would recommend you do as well, is have a look at Python, have a look at PowerShell. There are plenty of places on the internet that will help you learn those scripting languages, and those are two of the best to put on your resume, especially considering the environments we have today where there's a lot of Windows and there's a lot of cloud. Therefore, we need a lot of PowerShell and we need a lot of Python. So do what you can with that. That was a great question, Donald. Thank you for sending that one in. Let's do another question. This is an important one from 573 who says, hey, what games do you play? I like it when people ask questions that have nothing to do with the technologies we're using, because now I get to talk about something different. So right now I'm doing a lot of Xboxing. I have so little time to game, as you can imagine. Right now we're in the middle of creating and rolling out our latest Security Plus course. There's tons of things we're doing behind the scenes. It's a very exciting time, but it's very time consuming. We've been working on this for a long time. And so I have maybe an hour. Sometimes I have 2 hours at night that I can dedicate to sitting down with the Xbox controller and leaning back and simply doing something mindless. Right now it's Diablo 4. I stuck with it. I made it to the second season. And indeed, it is much improved in season 2. That's where I'm focusing now. I do have Starfield installed on the Xbox, haven't touched it. Single player games are not my thing. If I'm going to spend time, that very little amount of time during the day, I want some human interaction. I'm in this room with nobody but me for most of the day. The last thing I want to do is go to a game where it's nothing but me. I'd like to maybe communicate with some other adults. And indeed, there are some adults that I can communicate with on the Xbox side. So if you play Xbox, you're on the Xbox and doing some Diablo 4, let me know. We'll add you to our clan. We'll add you to whatever that gaming group, the guild is, on those, and being able to work through them. That will be a great place. And I think we'll have a lot of fun if you do that. And you'll see me almost never, because I'm in there an hour or two a night, but we're in there anyway. Not much of an EverQuest guy. I do have a history in World of Warcraft, so there is a little bit of that there. I think everybody goes through that, right? Everybody has to pass by World of Warcraft on the way. But that's when I really like those isometric sort of the higher level view that you get with Diablo 4. It's a lot of fun, and just so that takes care of our games question anyway. Now we won't do a games question for another year or two. So we're good on that one. Next question. Let's go back to technology real quick. This is actually a pretty common question, and it's a good question. This one is from Josh, who says, tried Network Plus a year ago, failed by 12 points. So close. I'm now worried about trying again and keep making excuses to not take it. Have you got any advice to get past this? Here's what I deal with. Whenever I'm walking into a certification exam, I go through tremendous concern. There's a lot of anxiety associated with taking a certification exam, and I feed right into it. I'm not very good. I'm not very good at this. So I go in to take this exam, and I'm sitting there, and it's difficult enough to get me in the room, and then I have to somehow concentrate on what's on the screen, and there's too much adrenaline going, and the first 10 minutes of me sitting there are almost wasted time. I don't even recognize what I'm reading. Similar problem. There have been certification exams that I have failed. I didn't want to go take them again. In this case, though, Josh, you only failed by 12 points. You almost passed this thing. Only a couple of bumps will get you now maybe another question or two, and you've passed this particular one. So this is a great situation to be in. You're already almost there. All you have to do is book it. So the first thing I tell myself, by the way, is that let's say you walk into this exam and you fail it again. All right, big deal. Nobody died. Nobody's standing at the door laughing at you when you come out. In fact, whenever I've had a problem with a certification exam, I've had nothing but support from the people that I have in my family and friends. So that's not the issue. You've got people standing right behind you going, well, go do it again. Go study and go take it again. You only fail if you end up not taking it again. That's the failure. But if you keep taking the exam, just go keep taking the exam until you pass it. Now, you obviously just don't want to walk right back in and take it without any type of study. There are things you can do to improve your score, or at least the potential to improve your score the next time you go. The first thing is that you need to look at your results. You may not even realize you have these because they used to give you a piece of paper when you walked out of the exam center that had a list of all of the topics you got wrong. Now, it's a very broad list. It's the topics, the subdomains that are in your exam objectives. So, for example, let me bring up the Network Plus exam objectives again. We're going to have a look at these. So, on this list of how you did on your exam, this is the exam objectives. You've seen these before already today. So, for example, domain 1.0 is networking fundamentals. So, the subdomains are 1.1 is compare and contrast the open systems interconnection, OSI, model layers, and encapsulation concepts. Section 1.2 is explain the characteristics of network topologies and network types. Domain 1.3 is summarize the types of cables and connectors and explain which is the appropriate type for a solution. So you get the idea. There are these broad categories within a single domain. I'm calling them subdomains, just so you can understand what we're talking about. So on your results page, you might get a line that says you missed one or more questions in subdomain 1.4. Given a scenario, configure a subnet and use appropriate IP addressing schemes. So you know that you missed a question that has to do with one of these topics. So there's where you start. In fact, you may even recall when you walk out, I often tell you, the second you walk out the door, start making notes of the things you know you got wrong. Start making notes of the topics you know that were a surprise for you. Then you can go back to your exam objectives and read up more on those. So this is a great opportunity if you have a piece of paper that lists out for you everything that you missed. Now you can go back to that list and start using that as a study guide. Well, you notice if you didn't miss anything in domain 1, but you missed 10 different topics in domain 4, well, then you need to spend more time on domain 4. So there's even things you can even derive from that list of what you got wrong. So go take the exam again. And I would recommend, highly recommend, that if you've studied for the N10-008, make sure you take that N10-008 exam before it is retired in March timeframe of 2025. And I think that's an important consideration too, because they could change quite a bit of information from one version of the exam to the other. You may have already studied for the N10-008, but what if they retire that exam and the N10-009, whatever that next version is going to be, what if suddenly half the exam is new? This is not unusual. It's things that they have done before. Is half of the content of the exam is brand new in the newer version. Well, that means you've effectively got to start over. And you don't want that to happen. You've already worked so hard to get to where you are. You're only 12 points from passing this thing. Go take the exam again. The worst thing that could happen is you don't pass it and you just study some more and schedule another one. Now, I realize there's a cost associated with that. I don't mean to be flippant because these are expensive exams to take. These cost a lot of money to go in and take these exams, hundreds of dollars. So you have to be ready when you walk in the door. But if you walk in the door and you're as ready as you can be and you still don't pass, that's fine. You knew you were as ready as you could be at that point. Now you figure out what you can change, what you can study more on, what you could do differently, and you walk in for the next one. And so it's a process that may be incremental, but it's one that eventually will get you to a passing score. And again, you can take this exam so many times. All you need is that minimum score to pass. Now, there have been people that have said, well, I needed a 750 on this exam and I got a 751. I said, great, you studied exactly the right amount. What if you got a 900? And I jokingly say, well, if you get a 900, you studied way too much. Why did you study that much? You got a perfect score. You didn't need a perfect score. You needed a non-perfect score just to get that certification. I do mean that in jest. You should be striving to get that 900 score, but you understand what I'm saying, is that you only need to make the minimum. And if you're only 12 points away from that, go get it. Go get that minimum score. I think that might be a useful one to consider. So great question, and a question, by the way, that is asked all the time of me. So thank you for asking that. Let's do some more. We have other questions here on this list. This is along those same lines. This is a good follow-up from Chris, who says, my exam's next Tuesday, 1 week from today. What should I do in my last week to ensure success? Chris, this is the sweet spot. Sometimes I will have people show up in my Discord and they say, I'm taking my exam in an hour. What can I do to ensure my success? And I sometimes will very jokingly reply with, you asked this question a week ago, is how you can do that, because an hour doesn't give me any time to help you. You have very little time to squeeze in any studying with 1 hour to go, but a week is perfect. And here's why. Here's what I recommend you do. Go grab your exam objectives. So we've got those, right? Let's start with our exam objectives. There we are. So on these exam objectives, there are all these different things we can look at. We can start with section 1.1, compare and contrast the open systems interconnection model, layers, and encapsulation concepts. So it lists for you all of these things you need to know. For example, the 7 layers of the OSI model: physical, data link, network, transport, session, presentation, and application. So if you can explain to yourself or to someone else what each of these layers does, which each of these bullets are, then you've now really learned everything you need to know about that for the exam. You can check those off. Now go to the next one. Data encapsulation and decapsulation within the OSI model context, especially around Ethernet header, IP header, TCP and UDP headers, TCP flags, the payload, and the MTU. Now, if you can talk to someone and explain what each one of those things is and why it is important in the context of the OSI model, then you've also got these right. You can check off all of those. So it just becomes a checklist. And as I've said before, if you know everything that is listed in these exam objectives, and they are big, to be fair, there's a lot of objectives in here, but if you know all of them and you can check off every single one of them, you're going to pass this exam. That's how easy it is. You don't have to go off scope here. You don't have to deal with topics that are not covered in this exam objectives, because they will very, very, very rarely, if ever, deviate from this list of objectives on your exam. This means they effectively tell you everything they're going to potentially ask you. So all you have to do is know it. This makes it very easy during this last week, before your exam, to use this and check off as many of these as you can. And maybe you go through this very quickly to start with, because there's some things you just know cold. Maybe you've already memorized all the port numbers. Got them. Check, 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 check. But maybe as you're flipping through this, you look at one of these and go, wait a second, there's a topic here, termination standards, the 568A and the 568B. I don't know if I really studied those enough. Let me circle that one. We're going to come back to that one and definitely study it for the exam. So there will be things that you can just check off the list. It's not a big deal. There will be other things that you probably do want to circle back and look at. And I think that's one of the best things you can do in your final week, is use that guide, those exam objectives as your checklist. And if you can check off everything, you're ready for your exam. It's really that easy. I would highly recommend also that you go back and look at the videos or the books and the other study materials you have to make sure the topics that you think it is the actual topic. Make sure that it matches up on the objectives with what you think it is. But if you go through those lists and you use that as your checklist, I think you'll be in great shape. And I think that's a good strategy to use if you're planning to study and be ready for this exam in a week. So that's one of the very probably most important things you can do during that weekly time frame. And by the way, thank you for asking the question today rather than an hour before your exam, because now you can do something about it. Let's do some more. Let's keep going through this list of questions that are coming in. Other questions. Let's see if there are others on this list. I want to be sure that I focus on the ones that are listed in here. A lot of questions have come in. Thank you for sending those in. Again, there's a tab on your Vevox. You can submit questions, and they are popping up on my side where I can focus on these and really break down the differences. This is, well, we've kind of talked about this one, so I think it's worth mentioning this. To have here. This is from Hank, who says, I'm currently working on my Network Plus. We'll do my Security Plus afterwards. Do you think it's necessary to go to college to study something like computer science? And if you recommend it, could I just do 2 years for an associate degree? Well, the real question is, what do employers want you to have? If you look at the jobs in your area, perhaps entry-level positions in IT that would be focusing on A+, Network Plus, or perhaps even Security Plus, especially if you're in the DC area, look at the job postings for those entry-level positions. And if you notice, the job postings are all asking for a 4-year degree, then that's what you would need to have, is that 4-year degree. That is what they would prefer when they're hiring. That would give you the best opportunity to either make the list for an interview or potentially get that particular job. It may not require you to have a 4-year degree, but if they put that in the job posting, it's obviously important to them. And you should look at different job postings from different companies in your area to get a feel for what they're asking for. And if they're asking for a computer science degree, which would be unusual for an IT position, but sometimes they do ask for it, maybe that would be something that you might want to pursue. Maybe they're looking for a 2-year associate degree. That may be another one. Maybe there are certain certifications they would like you to have, and they'll list out, we'd love you to have an A+ or a Network Plus or Security Plus or whatever certification is important to them. So really, it's not about what I would recommend. It's more along the lines of what do the employers want you to have? And I think that would be a good place to go. Now, as I mentioned earlier, having a computer science degree doesn't necessarily mean you know anything about IT, because you spend all your time programming. You spend all your time building applications. You spend all your time trying to figure out how to integrate software and hardware together, which of course has nothing to do with what we do on the IT side. So having a computer science degree is important from the perspective of, I have a 4-year degree and my degree is somewhat technical. Therefore, I could potentially shift over to the IT side and pick up things maybe a little bit faster than someone who does not have a computer science degree. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but we're going to maybe go with that to see how that works out. I would say that there are some colleges and universities that do have IT degrees, information technology degrees. They are rare. They are very few and far between. And in some cases, they say they're an IT degree and it's really a bunch of computer science courses. So you'll have to look at your university or college to see what they're offering. Or you might want to look at a third party to be able to do this, because universities aren't really providing IT degrees. There's other organizations and private schools that do provide 2- and 4-year IT degrees, and that might be a good thing to look at as well. So you've got some options on where you can focus. I think you should focus on what employers are looking for. And by the way, if you notice in a job description that the entire job is really perfect match for what you know, but the only difference is that you don't have any type of formal degree, go send your resume in anyway. I think that's an important part of this. So don't let yourself be the one that takes you out of the running for a job. Let them be the one that takes you out of the running, because you have no idea what type of responses they've gotten so far. And there might be something about your resume or your cover letter, which you've obviously customized for this particular role. And they're looking through it and going, well, this is the type of skills we want. They don't have a 4-year degree, but that's okay. I think given their skill set, let's bring them in and talk to them. That's what you're hoping for. Or they may decide, nope, no degree, we don't want to talk to you, and they'll send you a rejection letter. Great, fine, go to the next one. You'll get very used to rejection at that point. It's just a normal part of life when you're trying to find a job. Shouldn't bother you at all. No problem. Not a love connection. We're going to the next thing. That's a normal part of hunting for a job. So I say look at the job postings. I think they should be your barometer. They should be the arbiter of what you decide you should focus on, or what types of skills you need to have on your resume. Pretty important. Okay, other questions. We're going to keep going through this list and see what other things happen to be here. This is a question. This is not a Network Plus question. This is a Security Plus question. We sort of talked a little bit about Security Plus already. This Security Plus question asks, what are your thoughts on the new Security Plus SY0-701 exam? New set of exams will be released on November the 7th. So for those of you that are eventually getting into Security Plus, the 701 exam series is released on November 7th. The 601 series continues to be available all the way through July of 2024. So you've got about 6 or 7 months there of a ramp, where if you're already studying for your 601, keep studying. Go take your 601. It doesn't go away until July, and it's exactly the same Security Plus certification regardless of which exam version you pass. So you can't go wrong. Doesn't matter which one you take. the follow-up on Sam's question, who says, I have the option of either taking the 601 or the 701. I heard the new one has shifted the priority to cloud security. No, there's no, I'm not even, I've heard that. I've heard other people tell me, oh, I hear it's all about cloud security now. It's actually less about cloud security now. There's less cloud security on the 701. In fact, there's less of pretty much everything on the 701 because the 601 is big. 601 is about just over 1,000 exam objectives, whereas the 701 has about 750 exam objectives. So it's about 25% smaller as far as the amount of data you need to know, number of topics you need to memorize. The 701 also has a different focus as to what they want to present to you. One of the challenges they wanted to do, and one of the things you see with the 601, is that there's a lot of technical aspects to the 601. For example, you need to know about different authentication types. You need to understand all of these different command line utilities. There's all these different applications you need to know for doing security. But then there's also a huge bit of theory and process and procedure, which is an important part of security that you also need to know for the 601. So it's almost like the 601 is two monstrous exams that were kind of crammed together to make one single certification exam. And what they did with the 701 is they took out all of the heavily technical things like working at the command line and using the different tools, and they have now moved those over to the CISA exam, the Cybersecurity System Administrator exam. So for the new 701, it really focuses more on fundamentals, understanding the nomenclature, understanding process, procedure, and having a better feel for sitting in a meeting with other security professionals and understanding what they're talking to you about. That's the focus of the 701. There's not a priority of any kind. So there's not a priority in cloud computing. There's not a priority of anything. So go look at the exam objectives. There are a lot of different topics across a lot of different security technologies. And I think that's the important part of this. So if you're someone who's wanting to get their Security Plus and you haven't started studying yet, the 701 might be a good option for you just because it's slightly smaller than the 601. The problem you're going to run into is there will be very limited study materials available on launch day. This is normal. This happens all the time. It usually takes a number of months for other publishers to finally start putting out their books and start putting out their other study materials because it takes a long time to create those books and other study materials. Now, on our website, we will have course notes available on day one. We will have videos available on day one. We probably will have practice exams available soon after launch. They're almost, we're working along that line to have these available. So those will be coming out relatively fast. But you will have limited choices in study materials when the 701 is released versus where you will be in 6 months. And so that's why I tell people, don't be so quick to jump on the 701 bandwagon, because you may get there on day one and realize there's not a lot of books out here. There's not a lot of videos available. There's not a lot of options. You have the choice of this one and that one. You have 2 or 3 you might look at, and that's it. Now that might be enough for you, and you're the one who has to make that decision. You will find that by the time the retirement of 601 comes along in July, that you'll probably see pretty much everything that is going to be released will have been released, because that's 6 months from now. But that is one where there are differences. I highly, highly recommend that you download both sets of exam objectives, put them side by side, and see what the differences are. There are, in some cases, significant differences. There are, in some cases, very similar parts to these exams. And so I would highly recommend you decide yourself which one makes the most sense to you. I think that will be an important step. It's one of those things that is a thing we have to do today because the newest exam is so new. But like I said, in 6 months, we won't even be talking about this. Everybody will just be doing the 701. And that problem kind of fades away. You can choose any book that's available. There'll be plenty of resources. It's just sort of a short-term thing that occurs every time an exam is released. And that's why the 601 is not retired for 6 months, so that you always have an option of materials that are always available to get there. So I think that's really the key. Other questions. Let's have a look. Let's see what other things are here. This is a pretty good one that I think that is here. I think there's a good one that is really more of a career question. This is from Dan. Dan asks, how long should you work in a help desk and move to a more advanced role like network administration? That's a pretty good move out of the help desk. That's not a lateral move. You are moving up. You have leveled up out of the help desk at that point. And I think most people should be looking to level up out of the help desk. I think it's an important part of being in a role like a help desk and then moving up into other parts of IT. This is what most companies, I think, would prefer you did as well. They want you at the help desk to see how you work with people. It's more of an interpersonal skill evaluation than it is a technical job in many cases. The help desk is there to guide people through solving problems and get the right connections together to solve the problems that are being presented. In some cases, to solve those problems yourself. If you are in any role in IT, not just the help desk, but this applies to any role in IT, if you have become very comfortable at knowing the answers, at knowing the processes, you walk into work every day without any concern of not knowing something that is going to be important, that you've got a strong understanding of the applications and the tools that are used in your company, and you're still in the help desk, you're in the wrong job. Anytime you are comfortable in IT, you are in the wrong job. Anytime you know everything you need to know for your job in IT, you are in the wrong job. You should always be in a job in IT where there is an unknown, where you are pushing yourself into technologies that you've never used before and understanding new technologies that are coming down the road. You should always be learning in IT. There should never be a situation where you are not working towards learning something new. And the moment you stop learning in IT is the moment you stop being able to move up through the ranks. And as you move up or level up through those ranks in IT, you have more flexibility. You're being paid more money. There are more options available to you. In many cases, the advantages or the benefits that you get from a company or a job are better when you move into those better roles. So I highly recommend that if you are in IT today, and you are super comfortable in what you're doing, start looking at another job. You need to move out of IT, out of the help desk into the next job in your career. Maybe that is desktop administration. Maybe it's network administration. Maybe there's an entry-level security role. Maybe there's a job in the database administration, maybe cloud computing, maybe the data center management. You can do anything in IT. You've got the opportunities and they are out there. You just need to figure out what interests you and go find a great fit into a job that interests your same interests. I think that's probably the most important part. You will run into people who have been in the help desk and they've been there 10 years and they're just happy being in the help desk. They don't want to level up. They are happy being in that role in the help desk. Well, you can't argue with that. That's what they chose for themselves. That's how they like to work. But I think there are opportunities moving out of the help desk and moving up, because you should always be moving up. There's that 3-year rule we often talk about in IT. You work in a job 3 years, then you move to another company, or you move into a better role within the same company. Where most people say you're always moving to another company, because when you move up within your own company, the increase in pay is never as much as someone who moves to another company. You know, they might give you 5 to 10% more money within your own company. You might get 20 to 30% if you go somewhere else. That's sort of the nature of finding a job in IT. It's just how it works. But you have to stay in one place for a little bit of time. You have to stay there at least 3 years. That looks good on your resume. You become a good employee. You're doing the things expected of you. But then after that 3 years, you should be thinking, okay, I know this job pretty well now. I'm pretty comfortable with the technologies we're using. How can I now level up? What would be the next thing I want to do in my career? And that's where you can focus on, I'd like to get a job working with cloud computing. I'd like to get a job as a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company. I'd like to get a job doing this next thing. You have a chance to do it. And in fact, chat room's even saying 3 years, that's a long time. That's sort of a good number. Now, there have been jobs where I've been there for a year and then I left. Probably not the best look on a resume. And there's a lot of explaining you have to do at that point. And the last job I was in was with a phenomenal company, and I stayed there 7 years. So that 3 years is more of a guideline to give you a feel that eventually you need to be migrating out of this and go to the next job. And I have found people, I've worked with people in the industry, because as many of you know, I worked as a systems engineer for a very long time in IT. And as a systems engineer, I meet people all the time, either working in companies or working with other third-party providers, where they have just been doing that every 3 years like clockwork. They have moved up and moved up and moved up, and they've really put an emphasis in that. And because of that, they get paid quite a bit more because they moved from company to company to company every time. So it's pretty interesting the things you can do in this world of IT that's very different. But I highly recommend, after 6 months or a year of the help desk, 3 years is a normal job. If you're in the help desk for 6 months, you should now be thinking about what you want to do next. And after a year, you should already be gone. So it's that 3-year rule gets collapsed down to about 9 months when you're with the help desk. You need to get out of that help desk as quickly as possible. You still need to be there for a little bit of time. So you learn the ropes, you understand the technologies, you learn a little bit about the technologies you haven't used before. So after about 9 months to a year, you should already be in the mode of talking to other people. Maybe you already have people that you've met in the company that are with the desktop administration team, or the network administration team, or the server administration team, or the Active Directory team, or the cloud computing team, or you get the idea. So find those folks, start up conversations with them, get an understanding of the things they do, offer to volunteer with the projects they have going on the weekends or after hours so that you can see what they do. Maybe your idea of what they do is very different than the reality of what they do. And so that may be a good opportunity. Plus, they get to know you a little better. And when the next job opening comes up, they may come to you first and say, we got a job opening, you need to put your resume in. You'd be perfect for this position. I think the company you work for would like to see that as well. So that's another great place to go to get your best bang for your career. Is to follow some of those particular roles. Now, the important thing in IT, though, and I say this all the time, you get to decide your path. You get to decide what you want to do. And everybody has a different path. This is not like medicine, where there's a very specific set of criteria you must have to be able to be called a doctor or a physician's assistant or a registered nurse. There's a very specific thing you have to do. IT is very different. Our technology is changing all the time. The world of technology is just constantly being changed under our feet. It's constant change and very dynamic change. So we have the ability to jump into these newer technologies when they are created, which puts us at an advantage. And you can find some very, very interesting things happen when you find yourself on the cusp of those emerging technologies, and you're one of the few people in the world that understands anything about it. You suddenly become very, very popular. So there's things you can do to put yourself in that position, because when you're popular, you also get paid a little better. And that may be an important thing to you as well. Let's do some more questions as we go through this list. I've got other ones that are in here. So I've got here another question on this list. I have to read through these quite a little bit to be able to make those. Here's a pretty good one. This one is more about sort of a inside baseball a little bit from Emmanuel, who asks, have you ever considered making 2 study groups a month? Well, I've considered it. The problem is about time and motion. It's a physics problem for me. It takes about half a day to build the content for these live streams. And we do 4 live streams a month, which doesn't seem like a lot. But when you start looking at all of the other things going on behind the scenes, making videos, updating Security Plus, doing the daily pop quiz questions, and then building out all of the newer content that's coming down the pike, when you look at that, I'm taking time away from making content to build study group content. It sounds bad when I say it that way, because I really think the study groups are incredibly valuable. So I want to balance that out. I want to give the study group the time it deserves, but I also have to spend time doing these other projects as well. So if I had the time, I'd do a study group every day. I think it would be great, it'd be fun, but it takes a lot of time to build out the questions, to build out the slide decks, to get them into Vevox, to schedule them, to post it on YouTube, to get the streaming stuff synchronized, all the things that go around that. Not that those are insurmountable, but they take time, and time is the issue. But we do 4 study groups a month. We do A+ Core 1, A+ Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus. And right now, that's a good number. We do not just the first hour of Q&A, but also this Q&A in the second hour. And I've considered just having a Q&A study group, because that doesn't take a lot of preparation. You just sort of turn the camera on and answer questions from folks. But that also takes time away from the other things that we're doing here. So it is a balancing act. And I love the idea of doing more of these and doing them constantly. But there is a reality to this craziness. And the reality is just time. It's a physics issue. So maybe in the future, I'm holding out hope that maybe we do some different ones or interesting derivations of these study groups, but we'll have to figure out what that might be in the future. Other things on this list. Well, this is sort of another, since we're talking inside baseball and behind the scenes, this is another one. Hey, what happened to the YouTube live stream functionality to send a super chat? You may recall in previous study groups. And you see this all the time with other live streams where you can send and contribute money to the person who's doing the live stream. And it's a good way to bring up your topic in the chat. And it's another good way to help support and promote the people that you're watching. And I use the live streaming super chat / bits functionality and when I'm looking at YouTube, live YouTube videos or Twitch or other things as well. And I like it too. But when we implemented Vevox, we took the question process and put it into Vevox. It's really difficult to properly thank people for the super chat, especially we're in the first hour of Q&A. And then it becomes more complicated when I've got multiple screens at the same time. And so although I appreciate the thought, like it's difficult for me to explain how much I appreciate it. I appreciate the thought of the donations and the super chats. It just became, I felt bad when I wasn't able to thank people properly for the super chat. And I saw things going by. And after I realized I wasn't able to do all of this at one time, just because, again, a physics problem, I decided, let's not do super chats. Let's instead focus on answering questions. And I appreciate the thought. I appreciate the idea of a super chat. I appreciate you even considering wanting to donate something to this craziness that we do here. In the end, I think it was more important that people are able to submit their questions and I don't miss anybody or create any hard feelings because I wasn't able to properly thank them for that on the other side. So it's really more about my guilt than anything. So hopefully you can appreciate my guilt about that. And we really don't tend to take donations. That's not part of my business model. That's not what I wanted to focus on. So it was really a way that people could submit their questions and make it very easy for me to see them. But I also didn't want to rely on that. And at the end of this, it was a lot of challenge to have everything on one screen and be able to do it. So we just decided to drop it for now. So no secret behind that. Nothing too nefarious. It was just more about me being guilty, which happens. So let's go to the next question on the list. We're doing very well on time. I can fit a couple more in here. So here's a sort of a next step. We'll go through this one because I've been in this position before. From ML, it says, "Hi, I'm a network engineer currently. I was wondering what would be best to go for, Network Plus or CCNA or maybe a cert in Fortinet. Fortinet has a series of certs. I understand that it depends on the employer." That was going to be my standard response. So ML's been on a live stream before. "However, I'm looking for the all-around cert that covers a broad base." So I guess the question becomes then, what do you want to do next in your career? If you're a network engineer now, I would assume, this may not be the right assumption. But if you want to move up into a higher level of network engineering, maybe you're designing networks, or maybe you want to go work for a Cisco or Fortinet or Palo Alto Networks, then you might want to consider a higher level cert. Maybe a CCNA would be useful. It's not required, but it would be useful. Fortinet, if you do a lot of work with Fortinet and you want to be able to use that knowledge to get a job at another company that has Fortinet, Fortinet cert would be perfect. Or maybe you want to get a real firewall like a Palo Alto Networks and then be able, and I'm looking forward to your cards and letters, and be able to move to a company that has a different type of technology. Maybe you want to get that Palo Alto Network certification, or maybe you want to get, since we're hitting all the big points here, maybe you want a checkpoint certification. See, it doesn't matter to me. Whatever firewall you want to go with is fine with me. Then again, maybe you'd like to do more security. When you get into security, you're going to need to do a lot more planning. You're going to need a lot more network engineering on the security side. Maybe CCNA would be a good certification to have if you don't have one already. And it may be that the job you have now as a network engineer really positions you very well for learning what you need for the CCNA, because a lot of the topics there you probably already know. So that might be a good one. And a lot of employers like seeing that CCNA. But if you want to get out of the networking world, move into security, Fortinet would be a great one. Palo Alto Networks, another good one, the preferred one, of course. And then others, maybe other industry or in company-specific certs like Checkpoint might be another good idea. I think all of those are good ideas. I think it may be more important for you, since you already talked about what employers want. What do you want? What do you want to do in your career? I know we get this question all the time. You go to an interview, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I don't know. It's technology. In 10 years, I don't know what the world's going to be like in 10 years. Technology moves way faster than that. You always know it's somebody who hasn't worked in the technical field if they're asking you, what do you want to do in 10 years? The real question is, what do you want to do next? Let's just ask that. Let's get that question answered first. What do you want to do next? So I think that's where you would want to take a step back and go, I would love to be able to do this. I would love to be able to be in IT security for this big company down the street and work for them. Great. Go start seeing what they ask for. Find people that work there. Go to industry events like a Cisco user group meeting or a Microsoft user group meeting where some of the people from that company might attend. Find out on their job postings what they tend to ask for all the time. Are they asking for a CCNA? Are they asking for a Palo Alto Network cert because they're very distinguished and they have good taste? Maybe that's where they focus their efforts. That's where, if you ever get into figuring out what you want to do next, then you can create a path. And I think that's where we sometimes do this in reverse. I have people ask me all the time, hey, I just got my A+. Should I get it my Network Plus or Security Plus? That's not the question. The question is, what do you want to do next? All right, you want to be in that type of role? Well, there's lots of ways to get there. So ask a lot of people in the industry how they got there. Find out what job postings they have that would get you there. And then find out what you need to know to get from point A to point B. And there's probably a number of stepping stones along that path. Find out the path that makes sense to you. Create a strategy. Build out a path that makes sense for your knowledge and where you'd like to be. And start adding or addressing all of those steps in the path. Start checking them off. All right, got my Network Plus, check. Got my CCNA, check. Got a Palo Alto Network certification, check. Now you can start putting your name in for some positions that need those particular skills. And of course, that's not the only thing you should do. You should focus on all of the other things that they think are important with those particular skills. But those are going to be a very good way to build your knowledge base, which, by the way, you're going to use for the rest of your career. Getting a certification in Palo Alto Networks, by the way, helps you with things that you're doing on Fortinet, helps you with things you're doing on Checkpoint. And if you wanted to get specific certifications for those, you certainly could do that as well. I mean, there's no reason you have to stop with one, right? Go get multiples of these certs. All of these things work together. And the more of these that you get, even if you don't apply them towards a new job today, it may end up positioning you very well with what you're working on within your current position, and you'll be able to use those skills for the rest of your career. Once you know it, you know it. And the things that I learned when I got my Palo Alto Network certification, I was able to apply and build on. It helped that I work there, but I was able to apply and build on different aspects of those technologies and focus on individual niches within that technology. I'll give you an example. So I'm working at Palo Alto Networks as a systems engineer. And as a systems engineer, when you're working for a manufacturer, you really have to know everything possible about the core functionality of these technologies. You have to be able to answer questions at a moment's notice about any aspect of the way the device operates, how it's installed, how you manage it, how it switches over from in different HA modes, how you implement it into different layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3 configurations. You have to know what type of routing protocols it supports, how the IPsec is set up. You see, it's just got tons of things you need to know. And one of the things that will ultimately happen with a company and a product that broad is that they will pick and put you into a particular vertical. They'll put you into a specific silo of technology. And they'll say, you seem to be very good with scripting, so we're going to put you in the scripting automation silo. And you're going to learn all of the details about this product as it relates to its API, scripting to the API, using pre-built libraries to access the API, and then functionality you can use once you are using the API. Well, great. That's right up my alley. I'll do that. And that's what I did at Palo Alto Networks. That was one of the silos I was put into. And so I was able to not just become part of that silo, but then you start learning about the details of integrating your scripts with an API built into one of these next generation firewalls. Well, that knowledge certainly helped me when I was talking to customers about being able to use that functionality, but it also helped me understand, how could I build a script to integrate with any API? How can I use a library, a pre-built library, to take advantage of any manufacturer's API? Well, now you can start building on that. What employer wouldn't want those kinds of skills? So I think that's one of the things that I'm able to bring into this role. When we decided, let's build ProfessorMesser.com and make this a full-time thing, well, I'm bringing to the table practical experience. This is unfortunately not something you get with every person who is in the technology training area, is that I've already done it. I've been in the trenches. I've been building networks, designing networks, implementing firewalls, creating API integrations, converting firewall systems from one to another, focusing on security and cybersecurity in some of the biggest networks in the world. And I want to bring that knowledge to you. And hopefully you see that when we talk about the concepts and then how to apply the concepts. I'm pulling a lot of the things that we apply directly from my experiences of being in the field with these big companies. So hopefully that's something you can do too. Find those skills you want to learn, go learn them, and then keep learning them. And I think that Fortinet Cert is great. CCNA, fantastic. Network Plus, good foundational place to start. Find the one that makes sense for you and go do that. I think you can't go wrong, because even if you go out and you decide today, I'm going to go get that Fortinet cert, and you go out there and you get the Fortinet cert, and then you realize there's not as many people asking for Fortinet certifications as there is CCNA. Well, that's okay. You know what you do next? You go get the CCNA. So you can't go wrong. There is no wrong answer here. There's only, what do we want to do right now? What do we want our next job to be? Let's build the path and let's start checking off all of the things we need to make it down that path to where we want to go. That's it. That's your role. And hopefully you'll come off that crazy idea of getting more knowledge about Fortinet. I'm just kidding. Go get the Fortinet cert. Especially if you work with Fortinet, of course you should get a Fortinet cert. It makes perfect sense. Other things. So last ones that we have here, there are other good ones in this view that we could focus on. Other questions we have. The others that we have in this list, I'm trying to find one that's really going to apply and work through these last ones. I think that since we're talking about Network Plus, this is probably a good one to spend our time on right now. From the anonymous, Anonymous is everywhere. I don't know if you've seen this, but they ask so many questions. Hey, Professor, so the last study group, you said not to use Cisco Packet Tracer for studying for the Network Plus. Not exactly what I said, but we'll talk about that. Is there any free labs that we can use for the Network Plus for studying? Thanks, Professor. Hello from Haines City, Florida. That's my Haines City, Florida connection. Haines City. Gotta get back to Haines City. When's the last time I drove through Haines City? I have to find out. As far as Packet Tracer is concerned, for those of you not familiar with Packet Tracer, it is a free utility available from Cisco. Not totally free. You have to register with Cisco, but that's all you have to do. You don't have to pay any money. You register with Cisco, and you can use this product that they've created called Packet Tracer. It's a training product. It effectively is a way for you to emulate Cisco switches and other devices within your screen, sort of a virtual world that you can build out, switches, routers, computers, hubs, just tons of things that you can put in there, from bridges, switches. They got tons of technologies in there. Voice over IP. It's really quite a lot that you can do with it. It is a fantastic tool for becoming more familiar with the Cisco world of switches and routers. No question. Very valuable tool. Can effectively give you everything you need to be able to earn your CCNA without ever having to touch a physical switch or router, which is remarkable. And it's so quick and so easy to use, and really a very quality product. I use it all the time because it's fun to build out a network, try some different routing that you're working on. Maybe you want to try a failover. You can do everything in there. It works as if you have physical devices, except you can build them out in a number of minutes. What I meant in that previous study group is that it's a Packet Tracer, although it is a valuable tool, it is well outside the scope of what you would need to know to pass your Network Plus certification. You don't need to do any Packet Tracer for Network Plus. In fact, if you step through a Packet Tracer lab, you're already doing well more than you would ever need to pass your Network Plus certification. And that's why I don't recommend using Packet Tracer as a labbing tool for Network Plus. It's just too far outside the scope of the exam objectives. And as I've mentioned earlier, the exam objectives, they never deviate from that list. Very, very rarely deviate from that list. I hate to use never, but that's how rarely they deviate. It seems like they never deviate from that list. So I don't recommend using Packet Tracer because of that, because you're sort of wasting time in some as it applies to Network Plus. However, the things that you learn in Packet Tracer are things that you'll be using in your career when you're doing networking, whether it's with Cisco or any other company. So that's one of the advantages there. Once you learn what switching is, it applies to every switch made to man. Once you know how routing works, it works on any layer 3 device. Same things apply. So there are advantages to using Packet Tracer, just not so many advantages when it comes to Network Plus. The second part of your question, though, are there free labs that we could use for Network Plus for studying? There's not a lot. And I think labbing is a good way to learn the fundamentals. You learn about dynamic routing, but you never really see it in action unless you build out a network with dynamic routing. But there's a lot more to doing that. Now, I would say there are not any free labs. I recommend the CertMaster labs from CompTIA. They have been revamped for this latest version of Network Plus, and they're really good because they focus on the topics you need to know for the Network Plus exam. They're not free. They do cost money to be able to buy them, but they are very comprehensive and they're so easy to use. They spend a lot of time on the user interface, and I find that they're so easy to get up and running on any browser because you don't need any special executable like you do with Packet Tracer. You just bring up your browser and you connect to CertMaster Labs and you use it. And that's why if you go to professormesser.com/live right now and you're watching this on my site, there is a little tag at the top that talks about the labs. That's how much I like them, is I put them in there so people can find them easily. And you can find them on my website too under the Network Plus menu. There's an option there for recommended study materials. And it's a great way to support what we do here as well, because as a partner of CompTIA, they're nice enough to allow me to resell those through my website. Are they 100% necessary for you to pass your exam? No, of course not. But they can help really get the ideas down of What type, how do you set up a 568A versus 568B cable? What is the concept around the security on these types of networks? What does this switch configuration look like? They have all of these different labs. And if you're concerned about performance-based questions on the exam, CertMaster Labs is a great one to go through because they have all of these different labs that you could use, and they'll get you more familiar with some of the topics that you will undoubtedly find when you finally hit the exam, especially performance-based questions. So that's what I would recommend too, is maybe not focus so much on Packet Tracer, at least not for Network Plus, but maybe focus on things like CertMaster Labs or some of the other labs that you can find out there. I just don't see a lot of free ones out there. There's just not a lot of free labs available for Network Plus out there. Creating a lab it's an involved process. And I like Packet Tracer because it's sort of the engine that you can build everything else on. We really don't have anything else like that on the Network Plus side. You'd have to look at more commercial products like CertMaster Labs if that's something that you would like to do. Well, I think that brings us, I'm a little bit over time. Usually we like to stop at the top of the hour, but we had such good questions this week. I want to thank you for sending those questions in. We always have such a good time when we do these live study groups, and we really weren't able or can't do this when we're working through these live study groups if we're trying to get people on board and do this. It's so nice to have a back and forth conversation with everyone who's here. So thank you so much for doing that. If you enjoyed watching this video, we would also love it if you were to give it a thumbs up there on the YouTube side. That's what my folks over on YouTube are constantly sending me emails and adding me to new features that are available on YouTube. And I get to hear about new things coming down the line. And the only reason I'm able to do that is thanks to you, with your subscriptions, with everything else that you're doing in and working through. This is the key to learning more about these technologies, is all of us just getting together and learning it as one group. I will also remind you, we do a similar thing on Discord all the time. If you liked what we did here, there are folks on Discord all day, every day that are studying for their Network Plus exam. People are going through different videos. They're doing different Q&A. It's a great place and a good community. If you're trying to find a group of people that are trying to get through their certification studies, come have a look at our Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. Well, that's a great place to stop for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for everything that you do. Come on back on Thursday. We have our Security Plus study group this week, another whole brand new set of questions ready to go on the Security Plus side, and it'll be some fun there too. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on our Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.